Imagine this for a moment. What if you could understand people with such clarity that their actions no longer confuse you? What if the behavior that once frustrated you suddenly became predictable, understandable, and manageable? What if you could see the hidden motivations behind every smile, every criticism, every outburst, and every silence? Most people go through life blind to the forces that direct human behavior. They react emotionally, misunderstand others, and misread themselves. But there is a different way to live, a way where you move through the world with sharper eyes, deeper awareness, and a stronger mind. That way begins with understanding the laws of human nature. What follows is a long, immersive, motivational narrative crafted to help you absorb the key principles of this powerful book. The goal is simple: to help you understand people, master your emotions, strengthen your influence, and elevate your life. The foundation of human nature. Human beings are complex creatures driven by emotions, desires, fears, and deep-rooted patterns formed early in life. You may think people behave logically, but most of what they do arises from primal instincts that operate beneath conscious awareness. Understanding these instincts is not about judging people, it's about recognizing the truth. The first step to mastering human nature is seeing that you are part of this nature too. You are not separate from the irrational impulses you see in others. You also react emotionally before you think. You also interpret things through biases. You also fall into patterns created long before you understood yourself. The moment you accept this, you gain power, because power begins with awareness. When you understand yourself, you understand others. When you understand others, you navigate life with far more success. Master your emotional self. Mastering your emotional self is one of the most powerful skills you can ever develop, because emotions shape the way you see the world long before your mind has a chance to think clearly. Most people believe they act from logic, but the truth is that emotions arrive first, and reasoning comes after. Your feelings influence your decisions, your reactions, your relationships, and even your self-image. When you feel angry, insecure, jealous, or stressed, your mind begins to distort reality. You start to assume things that are not true, you take words more personally, and you react in ways you later regret. This is why emotional mastery is essential. It begins with learning to observe your emotions instead of getting lost in them. When a strong feeling rises, pause and ask yourself, why am I feeling this? Where is this emotion coming from? What is the real reason behind this reaction? These questions create emotional space, a small mental distance between your feeling and your response. And that distance is a source of incredible power. When you step back and look at your emotions with awareness, you gain clarity. You begin to see opportunities you once overlooked because you are no longer blinded by fear or frustration. You start noticing people's intentions more accurately because your mind is not clouded by assumptions. Emotional mastery does not mean suppressing your feelings or pretending they do not exist. It means understanding them so deeply that they no longer control your behavior. Instead of being someone who reacts instantly, you become someone who responds wisely. You become calmer, more confident, and more grounded. And as you develop this skill, you'll notice that life becomes easier, not because problems disappear, but because you handle them with strength and clarity. Transform self-sabotage into self-awareness. Transforming self-sabotage into self-awareness begins with recognizing that we all carry hidden patterns, habits of thinking and behaving that repeat again and again throughout our lives. Some of these patterns guide us toward success, growth, and confidence, while others quietly hold us back, limiting our progress and blocking our potential. If you examine your experiences honestly, you will notice something important. Your failures are not random accidents. They follow a familiar path. You may find yourself attracting the same type of people, facing the same relationship issues, struggling with the same insecurities, or reacting in ways that lead to the same negative outcomes. These repetitions are not the world working against you. They are signs that a pattern within you is expressing itself repeatedly. Most people look outward and blame circumstances, timing, or other people, but true growth begins when you look inward. Self-awareness is the courage to examine your own role in these cycles. It is the willingness to ask yourself difficult but necessary questions. Why do I keep repeating this behavior? Where did this belief come from? How long have I been carrying this fear or insecurity? When you trace these patterns back to their roots, childhood experiences, past failures, emotional wounds, they begin to lose their power over you. You start to understand why certain situations trigger you, why certain people frustrate you, and why you respond the way you do. Developing this level of awareness requires honesty, patience, and consistency. It is not easy to face your own self-sabotage, but once you do, everything begins to change. When you break your patterns, you break the limits they have placed on your life. You free yourself to act differently, think differently, and choose differently. You begin to grow beyond your old identity and step into a stronger, wiser, and more conscious version of yourself. Law 3. See behind the mask of people. Every person you meet wears a mask, whether they realize it or not. This mask is the version of themselves they want the world to see, not the version that truly exists underneath. People hide their fears, insecurities, weaknesses, and deeper motives behind carefully crafted expressions, behaviors, and attitudes. Some masks are harmless. People use them to protect their vulnerable hearts or to avoid judgment. Others are more calculated, designed to manipulate, deceive, or control. Understanding this truth is essential if you want to navigate the world with clarity and confidence. Seeing behind the mask requires careful observation. Look closely at micro-expressions, those tiny, fleeting facial movements that reveal a person's true emotional state. Notice emotional leaks, such as a forced smile that doesn't reach the eyes, or a tone of voice that doesn't match the words being spoken. Pay attention to contradictions between someone's behavior and what they claim. If someone says, "I'm fine," but their posture is tense and their energy feels heavy, trust the energy, not the words. When someone exaggerates their confidence, bragging or showing off, it is often a sign of deeper insecurity. The ability to see behind the mask doesn't make you cynical. It makes you wise. It helps you avoid manipulation and prevents you from trusting too quickly or too blindly. You learn to evaluate people not by their appearance, but by their patterns, behaviors, and emotional signals. This awareness strengthens your relationships because you understand people's true needs and vulnerabilities. It also protects you from those who might take advantage of your kindness or innocence. When you learn to read people accurately, you communicate better, judge situations more clearly, and respond with maturity rather than confusion. Seeing the mask and what lies beneath it gives you the power to interact with people on a deeper, more truthful level. Law 4. Understand people's motivations. Every human being is driven by desire. No one is neutral. Every action, every word, every choice a person makes is influenced by something they want on the inside. Validation, power, comfort, attention, respect, safety, control, admiration, or a sense of belonging. These inner desires shape behavior far more than logic does. If you want to understand people deeply, you must learn to identify these hidden motivations. Instead of focusing only on what people say, pay attention to what they consistently pursue. Notice what excites them, what angers them, what makes them defensive, and what they are willing to work hard for. These emotional responses reveal what matters to them more than their words do. People rarely say their true motives openly. They hide them to appear humble, polite, strong, or independent. But motives always show up in patterns. A person who seeks validation will constantly look for compliments or reassurance. Someone driven by power will try to influence decisions or position themselves above others. Someone who craves safety will avoid risk, confrontation, or change. When you recognize these desires, you unlock the key to influencing people. Communication becomes easier because you speak to what they feel, not just what they think. Relationships become deeper because you connect with their emotional core. Conflict becomes smoother because you understand the root of their reactions. Understanding motivations also protects you. You learn to identify when someone's actions are driven by jealousy, insecurity, or hidden agendas. You see when someone is pretending to be helpful but actually wants control. You see when someone's kindness has strings attached. When you understand what people truly want, you stop taking their behavior personally and start responding strategically. This ability allows you to guide conversations, build stronger bonds, and move through the world with greater clarity and influence. 5. The law of short-sightedness. Human beings are naturally guided by emotions in the present moment. They often prioritize immediate feelings over long-term benefit. This short-sightedness leads to impulsive decisions, quick judgments, and a desire for instant gratification. People want fast results, quick recognition, and immediate comfort. But this mindset creates unnecessary problems, stress, and regret. The law of short-sightedness teaches that true power belongs to those who can step back and see the bigger picture, those who can pause before reacting, those who can think about consequences before taking action, those who can remain calm and focused even when everyone around them is overwhelmed by emotion. To rise above short-sightedness, you must learn emotional patience. Emotional patience means allowing yourself time to process before you respond. Instead of reacting instantly when something upsets you, you give your mind space to understand what's actually happening. This prevents misunderstandings and protects you from making decisions you'll regret. Emotional patience also helps you make smarter long-term choices. Choices that build your future instead of feeding temporary feelings. People who lack patience often sabotage themselves. They end relationships too quickly, quit goals too early, and speak words that damage trust. They cannot see beyond the present moment. But when you develop long-term vision, you gain a tremendous advantage. You notice patterns others are blind to. You predict outcomes before they unfold. You stay composed when others panic. You make decisions that lead to growth instead of chaos. This law is a reminder that success, wisdom, and emotional strength all come from the ability to zoom out. When you learn to think beyond the immediate impulse, you gain control over your reactions, your future, and your life. The world rewards those who can see beyond the moment, those who choose clarity over impulse, vision over emotion, and wisdom over speed. Control the narcissistic impulse. Every human being carries a narcissistic core, whether they want to admit it or not. This core is the inner voice that seeks attention, recognition, validation, and admiration. It wants to feel important and appreciated. When this part of your mind is balanced and controlled, it can be a powerful force for growth. It pushes you to improve, to work hard, and to achieve meaningful goals. But when it becomes excessive or unchecked, it leads to entitlement, jealousy, resentment, and self-centered behavior that damages relationships and limits personal growth. Recognizing the narcissistic impulse in yourself is one of the most important steps toward emotional maturity. It allows you to observe your ego instead of letting it control your behavior. It helps you understand when you are taking things too personally, when you are overreacting to criticism, or when you are trying too hard to seek approval. Understanding this impulse in others is equally valuable. When you see someone acting defensively or craving attention, you understand that it's coming from insecurity, not strength. This awareness helps you approach people with patience, not frustration. It prevents unnecessary conflict because you can recognize when someone's ego, not their true self, is speaking. The most powerful way to rise above narcissism is to shift your focus outward. Instead of constantly worrying about how others see you, start paying attention to how you can contribute, help, and understand others. Turn your attention from demanding value to creating value. When you practice empathy, when you listen deeply, when you make others feel seen, you develop real confidence, the kind that doesn't need constant validation. Over time, your relationships become healthier, your mind becomes calmer, and your sense of purpose becomes stronger. Mastering your narcissistic impulse doesn't make you weak. It makes you wiser, more grounded, and far more influential. The law of role-playing human beings act differently depending on the environment they're in, and the role they believe they must play within that environment. A person who appears strong, confident, and assertive at work may struggle with insecurity or self-doubt at home. Another person who is gentle and kind with friends may become defensive or aggressive around strangers. These differences exist because people subconsciously adapt to social roles, professional roles, family roles, emotional roles, and societal roles. Recognizing this truth helps you avoid taking behavior personally. Most actions people display are not about you at all. They are simply expressions of the role they feel they must play in that particular moment. When you understand the concept of role-playing, you learn to observe people with clarity instead of judgment. You begin to recognize when someone is speaking from stress, pressure, insecurity, or expectation rather than intention. This insight allows you to communicate more effectively because you meet people where they truly are, not where you assume they are. If you want to influence people, you must adapt to the role they are currently in. Speak their emotional language, understand their mindset, align with their perspective. When you do this, they are far more open to hearing you, trusting you, and cooperating with you. This law also helps you become more conscious of the roles you play. You begin to notice when you shift into a role that doesn't serve you, such as trying too hard to please, to impress, or to dominate. With awareness, you can choose roles that reflect your authentic nature rather than roles shaped by fear or habit. When you become mindful of both your own roles and the roles others play, social situations become easier, relationships become stronger, and communication becomes smoother. You move through the world with emotional intelligence, understanding that everyone, including you, is simply playing a part, shaped by circumstances. Law 8. Understand people's attachment patterns. Attachment patterns are formed early in life and become the emotional blueprint for how people behave in relationships. These patterns influence how someone loves, how they communicate, how they handle conflict, and how they respond to closeness or distance. Some people develop an anxious attachment style, meaning they fear abandonment and constantly worry about losing connection. They may seek reassurance, overthink, or feel insecure easily. Others develop an avoidant attachment style, meaning they fear emotional closeness. They may withdraw, shut down, or distance themselves when things feel too intimate. Then there are those with a secure attachment style, who feel comfortable with both closeness and independence. They trust the relationship and communicate with confidence. Understanding these patterns is incredibly powerful because it helps you interpret behavior in a healthier and more compassionate way. When someone pulls away or becomes distant, it may not be about you. It may be because they fear vulnerability. When someone becomes overly anxious or reactive, it may be because they fear being abandoned. When someone behaves calmly and confidently, it may be because they developed security early on. This awareness helps you respond with patience instead of confusion. By recognizing attachment patterns, you become a better communicator, partner, friend, and leader. You learn to see the emotional triggers behind people's actions. You can identify when someone is acting from fear rather than intention. This prevents misunderstandings, reduces conflict, and improves emotional connection. It also helps you understand your own attachment style, so you can break unhealthy patterns and build healthier relationships. When you master this law, you stop reacting emotionally to others and start responding thoughtfully. You understand people not just through their words, but through their wounds, fears, and emotional histories. This deep awareness allows you to create relationships built on empathy, understanding, and emotional intelligence. Law 9. Respect the dark side of human nature. Human nature is not purely light, kindness, or positivity. It is a mixture of both light and shadow. Every person you meet, including yourself, has a darker side composed of jealousy, insecurity, aggression, selfishness, and hidden resentment. These traits often remain beneath the surface, masked by politeness, social roles, or practiced smiles. But ignoring them doesn't make them disappear. It simply makes you blind to reality. Respecting the dark side means understanding that people act from hidden motives more often than from conscious intention. When someone criticizes you, it might be envy disguised as advice. When someone becomes distant, it may be insecurity, not indifference. When someone tries to dominate a conversation, it may come from fear, not confidence. Awareness of this complexity doesn't make you negative or suspicious. It makes you intelligent. It helps you avoid taking things personally, Because you begin to understand that most negative behavior is an expression of someone else's internal struggle. It allows you to protect your energy by recognizing subtle signs of manipulation, jealousy, competitiveness, or passive aggression before they escalate. It also forces you to face your own darker impulses. When you feel jealous, admit it. When you feel threatened, explore why. When you want to control others, understand the fear behind it. The goal is not to eliminate the dark side. It's part of being human. The goal is to recognize it, manage it, and make sure it does not control your decisions. When you accept that every person is battling inner shadows, you gain emotional wisdom. You become less reactive, more strategic, and more compassionate. Ultimately, respecting the dark side makes you stronger, more resilient, and far more capable of navigating the complexities of human behavior. The law of envy. Envy is one of the most powerful yet invisible forces in human behavior. Unlike anger or sadness, envy hides itself. People rarely admit feeling it, but it silently shapes relationships, workplaces, and even family dynamics. Envy arises when someone sees another person's talent, success, confidence, or opportunities, and feels threatened by them. Instead of feeling inspired, they feel inferior. Instead of admiring, they compare. And instead of celebrating, they resent. This resentment doesn't always come in obvious forms. It often appears as subtle sarcasm, small criticisms disguised as jokes, passive-aggressive behavior, or attempts to downplay your achievements. Understanding envy means recognizing its silent presence. When you succeed, not everyone will clap. When you grow, not everyone will be happy for you. Some people will feel challenged by your confidence. Others will feel exposed by your progress. Handling envy wisely means protecting yourself while staying grounded. Don't flaunt your success. Let your work speak for itself. Share credit instead of hoarding it. It reduces unnecessary competition. Stay humble and calm, especially when you win. Humility disarms envious people and minimizes hostility. But the most important lesson is this: do not fall into the trap of envying others. When you compare yourself to someone else, you weaken your own path. Every person has a different timeline, a different background, and a different journey. Focus on your growth, your rhythm, your opportunities. Celebrate others without resenting them. Their success does not reduce your potential. The moment you shift your attention inward, toward your work and your evolution, envy loses its power. When you free yourself from comparison, you unlock a level of peace and creativity that envy can never give you. Law 11. The law of grandiose expectations. Human beings naturally dream big, but they often fail to prepare big. This creates a gap between expectation and reality, a gap filled with disappointment, frustration, and self-doubt. Grandiosity makes people believe that starting something is enough to guarantee success. They expect immediate results, smooth progress, and fast recognition. But life doesn't work that way. Every meaningful goal demands time, effort, mistakes, adjustments, and discipline. The problem is not ambition. Ambition is powerful. The problem is unrealistic expectation, the belief that success should come easily simply because you want it. Grandiosity leads to overconfidence at the beginning and discouragement when challenges arise. People quit not because they cannot achieve their goals, but because they underestimated the effort required. They didn't expect obstacles. They didn't anticipate slow progress. They didn't prepare for the emotional resistance that comes with growth. The antidote to grandiosity is a combination of clear vision and grounded execution. Dream big, yes, but plan bigger. Expect obstacles, expect difficulty, expect delays. Not because you are pessimistic, but because you are mature. When you approach your goals with realistic preparation, you become unstoppable. You build mental toughness. You stay committed even when motivation fades. You adapt when plans change. You push forward when things get uncomfortable. This mindset transforms ambition into achievement. The key is balance. Hold confidence in your abilities while respecting the process required to develop them. Embrace discipline as the vehicle that turns dreams into results. Replace unrealistic expectations with long-term preparation. When you combine vision with patience, ambition with strategy, and confidence with effort, you become the kind of person who doesn't just dream of success. You build it step by step. And once you master this law, nothing can stop your growth. Law 12. The law of defensiveness. People have an automatic biological response to perceived criticism. They protect their self-image, shut down, and stop listening. When someone feels attacked, the first instinct is to defend, explain, or counterattack. The mind narrows, reasoning weakens, and the heart hardens. That is why persuasion rarely works when it begins with a blunt correction. If you want to influence another person, your first task is to lower their defenses, not raise them. This requires emotional intelligence and tactical kindness. Practically, it means avoiding direct accusations or "you're wrong" statements. Instead, frame your observations as questions, not judgments. Invite collaboration. What do you think about this idea? Rather than, "You missed the point." Let people arrive at conclusions on their own by planting subtle suggestions and gentle nudges. The art of making someone feel the idea was theirs is not manipulation when used ethically. It is respectful leadership. It lets the other person retain dignity and feel ownership, which increases buy-in and reduces resistance. Use language that validates feelings and acknowledges effort. "I see why you approached it this way," or "that makes sense given what you were working with." Offer improvements as enhancements, not corrections. One thing that might help is, rather than, "You did it wrong." Tone, timing, and body language matter as much as words. A calm voice, open posture, and a moment of pause can disarm defensiveness more than any polite sentence. Remember that humans respond to respect far better than to confrontation. Treat people as allies, not opponents. When you do, you create space for real dialogue, where ideas move and change without egos clashing. Over time, this approach builds trust, deepens relationships, and makes you far more persuasive. Not by force, but by guiding others gently toward better choices. Law 13. Advance with strategic patience. Strategic patience is the discipline of combining long-term vision with deliberate timing. It is different from passivity or indecision. It is active restraint. When you act from impulse, you respond to the loudest feeling in the room: anger, fear, excitement. And you often pay for it later. Strategic patience asks you to slow down, think several moves ahead, and consider how actions will ripple through time. This kind of thinking borrows from chess more than from sprinting. You evaluate the board, anticipate responses, and place moves that create future advantages rather than immediate thrills. Practically, strategic patience shows up in many forms: delaying a reaction to gather information, waiting for the right moment to present an idea, investing steadily in skill development rather than chasing quick wins, or walking away from an argument when the cost outweighs the gain. Most failures come from impatience, from wanting results today without building the foundation required to sustain them. People who rush sacrifice depth for speed and find themselves repeating the same mistakes. The power of patience is that it gives you perspective. It allows you to spot patterns, understand people's rhythms, and choose moments of maximum leverage. Patience does not mean inaction. It means acting at the optimal time with prepared resources and emotional stability. Combine it with strategy, clear goals, contingency plans, and an honest appraisal of risks. And you turn waiting into a weapon. Over time, this approach compounds. Small, well-timed efforts accumulate into meaningful progress. In relationships, careers, and projects, strategic patience keeps you from burning bridges, wasting energy, and making impulsive choices that look good now, but fail later. In short, when you learn to wait wisely and act precisely, you move with intention rather than desperation. And that is how you win repeatedly. Law 14. The Law of Group Dynamics. Human behavior changes the moment individuals enter a group. Even strong-willed people can begin to think, act, and feel differently when surrounded by others. Groups create invisible emotional currents, waves of excitement, fear, confidence, or aggression that individuals absorb without even realizing it. This is why crowds cheer louder together, panic faster together, and make riskier decisions together. Humans are wired to mirror and conform. It is a survival instinct from ancient times when belonging meant safety. But in modern life, this instinct can mislead you. You may follow trends that don't align with your values, agree with opinions you don't truly support, or adopt emotions that were never yours in the first place. Group energy is powerful, so powerful that people often lose their individuality inside it. Understanding group dynamics gives you an advantage. You become aware of how emotions spread, how people adopt roles, and how leadership emerges. Instead of getting swept away by the group's mood, you learn to observe it with a clear mind. When a group becomes fearful, you don't automatically fear with them. You analyze why. When a group becomes overly confident, you keep your balance instead of joining blindly. This separation allows you to influence groups more effectively because you are not emotionally tangled with them. To stay strong within any group, maintain your individuality. Think independently even when surrounded by noise. Hold on to your values, your perceptions, and your internal compass. When you participate, participate consciously, not reactively. Become the person who can step outside the collective emotion and see what others cannot. This makes you a stronger leader, a wiser decision-maker, and a more resilient human being. Mastering group dynamics is not about resisting groups. It is about staying grounded, aware, and fully yourself within them. Law 15. Awaken the authentic. Most people live behind layers of social personality, shaped by expectations from family, culture, peers, and society. They act in ways that make them accepted, praised, or understood. Over time, this social mask becomes so practiced that people forget who they are beneath it. They chase goals they never truly wanted, follow paths chosen for them, and silence the inner voice that once knew their real desires. But true strength, purpose, and peace come from reconnecting with your authentic self. the self that exists when no one is watching, judging, or expecting. Awakening the authentic self begins with deep, honest questioning. Ask yourself, who am I without external pressure? What do I genuinely want from life? What brings me alive? What values matter to me, not to others, but to me? These questions strip away the noise and reveal the core of your identity. When you listen to the answers, you start noticing the difference between what feels right and what feels forced. You recognize when you're acting out of fear versus truth. You begin to understand which dreams are yours and which ones you inherited from others. Living authentically doesn't mean abandoning responsibilities or rejecting society. It means aligning your actions with your inner values instead of bending endlessly to please others. When you reconnect with your true self, your decisions become clearer because they come from within. You stop competing with others because you finally understand your own path. Your confidence grows naturally, not from approval, but from integrity. You attract relationships and opportunities that match your real spirit, not your social mask. Authenticity makes you powerful. It frees you from the exhausting task of trying to be someone else. It replaces confusion with clarity, anxiety with purpose, and insecurity with inner strength. When you awaken the authentic self, you stop living on the surface and start living from your soul. The ultimate goal: mastery of self and others. The laws of human nature are not meant to make you manipulative. They are meant to make you wise. They help you recognize that every human is a combination of wounds and strengths, fears and dreams, light and dark. When you master these laws, you stop taking things personally, you make better decisions, you build stronger relationships, you avoid toxic people, you influence without force, and you rise above emotional chaos. In every situation, you remain grounded, centered, and powerful. Understanding human nature is not about controlling others. It's about liberating yourself. It is about seeing clearly in a world full of confusion. It is about staying calm in situations that overwhelm others. It is about becoming the kind of person who moves through life with strength, awareness, and grace. Final message. The greatest advantage you can have in life is not intelligence. It is not talent. It is not luck. It is awareness. When you understand human nature, your own and others, you unlock a level of power and confidence that few people ever experience. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop guessing and start understanding. You stop fearing people and start navigating them with mastery. This is the path to emotional strength, personal success, and inner freedom. This is the path to becoming the highest version of yourself. This is the path revealed by the laws of human nature.